Old Lamech heard the shrill cry of his newborn son, and his heart felt an odd combination of unbelievable joy and intense fear. He had so many hopes and dreams for his son, whom he loved instantly. But the world was filled with evil, and how would any of those dreams become a reality for his son in a world that was so evil and hated God? Maybe you've been there, so concerned about the world your children would live in that it's kept you up at night, or maybe it's even stopped you from having a family. If you have children, maybe the news and the events of the world break your heart, and it rises up anxiety and fear of your children leaving your home, care, or even your eyesight. Lamech had lived long enough in his 182 years of life that he knew the world wouldn't get better, but worse. His ancestor Adam, the original man, had lived over 900 years and was still alive while Lamech had grown up. He heard the stories after a hard day's work of survival around the campfire and underneath a blanket of stars of how perfect the world was. And then in one moment, one decision, everything changed. And it's been getting worse since that time. Now he was older and had a son of his own. His ancestor had passed away, and there were very few people in the world who cared about following the Creator or his ways, and instead followed their own desires. Does that sound familiar to you? Maybe it was a single moment, or maybe it was something that had been on his heart since he was told his wife would have a baby. But here Lamech was, as he held his new, perfect baby boy, and with tears streaming down his face, he whispered, "His name is Noah." In ancient cultures, the name someone was given had a deeper meaning than many of the names today. In our modern day society, names seem to be given because parents like the sound of the name. For instance, my mom named me Megan because she went to high school with someone who had the same name, and she just always liked it. I'm pretty confident that my mom didn't look up the meaning of the name, or did she know or anticipate the course that her life, and therefore mine, would end up taking. Megan means pearl, but for much of my life, I didn't feel as though I were a pearl. I felt much more like the annoying, painful grain of sand that irritates the oyster. I never believed that beauty could come from me or my life, and it didn't make sense that my name meant something precious and beautiful when I never saw any of that in my life. In a similar way, Lamech named his son Noah, which means rest. In ancient cultures, including Hebrew or Israelite culture, children were given names to represent what was happening during that time, what the parents believed or felt at the time of the child's birth. It could have been an event that they had experienced from God, or it could be what they hoped would happen. So Lamech names his son with intent and purpose. You can sense the hope ringing in his description of why he named him Noah in Genesis 5:28 through 29. When Lamech had lived 182 years, he fathered a son and called his name Noah, saying, "Out of the ground that the Lord has cursed, this one shall bring us relief from our work and from the painful toil of our hands." Lamech had lived his entire life in the turmoil and evil from all of the sin that had entered the world, much like you and I are still doing thousands of years later. But Lamech knew Adam, and he had heard directly from Adam the promise of God bringing a Savior. And the true rest our soul craves can only come from the Savior. Lamech had hoped that his son would play a part in God saving the world, and his discernment and hope was correct, even though it may not have played out in the way he anticipated. Despite living in a world that was so evil and wretched that God had to wash it clean, Lamech had hope for his son, and I believe that we can have the same hope for our children and for ourselves, despite living in an evil and wretched world that seems to hate God and his ways. Lamech named Noah with the hope and anticipation that humanity would have rest. Maybe the meaning of your name or the circumstances of your life haven't played out how you believed, and that has caused you to lose hope. I never believed that I was as precious and beautiful as a pearl. With my scarred past of abuse and abandonment, I thought I was unlovable, and I still struggle with those thoughts. But God has showed me that a pearl is made over time, adding another layer with each irritation it experiences. The abandonment and the abuse that I've experienced in my life has added layer upon layer of the pearl of who I am becoming. Having my heart shattered by circumstances and choices made by others and myself has also added layers to this pearl. Having cancer has added another layer to this pearl. And having to grieve and heal from my own childhood as I raise my children adds more layers to the pearl of who I am becoming. I had to change my perspective to line up with what God has said about me and my life circumstances. And when I did that, I was able to see how my name fits when it's in line with Him. It wasn't that I was a pearl as soon as I was born. It was that I was becoming a pearl as I walk this journey of life. And despite the ugliness of the world and the times that I live in, God is showing me so many beautiful things, which gives me so much hope. Lamech believed that God would provide a savior, and he had hope that his son would be a part of the story. Noah was a really important part of the redemption story. Noah was obedient to God's direction, and in his life, we see rest and relief for creation and the path for Jesus to come, which is the ultimate hope that we can have. I encourage you to look up the meaning of your name, and if possible, look it up in other languages. How can those meanings line up with what God is doing and what He has done in your life? Maybe, like Noah and myself, the meaning of your name doesn't seem to quite fit. So I encourage you to ask God to reveal to you His truth and how you line up in His story, His purpose, His creation, and His hope. I believe that God will answer you if you ask Him. All right, friends, if you enjoyed this video, I would love for you to leave me a comment and let me know what you are learning about your name and what God is showing you through it. And until next time, remember that you are loved and created with purpose. Bye.